Hi, good evening. Welcome to Community Viewpoint for Monday, August 1st. I'm your host tonight, Maria Hurst, and I'm back. And first, before we start, I just want to say thank you to everyone for all of your thoughts, prayers, and support while I have been out. And I just want to introduce our guests now. I am pleased to have Donna Lamb, and then we're going to introduce some other guests. And we're going to be talking about some Nye County water issues. And we have a couple of members of Nye County and of the Nye County Water Board. So Donna, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hi everybody. Yes, I'm a board member on the Nye County Water District, and we have with us today some people from the Natural Resources Department. I'd like to introduce first Daryl Lacey. And Daryl, would you like to explain who you are and what you do?
Well, actually my title with Nye County is Director of Community Development, but I also wear the hat of Acting General Manager of the Nye County Water District. The Water District doesn't have any employees of itself. It's utilizing shared staff with the county, and the county has quite a bit of expertise in water issues, so we're happy to work with the Water District on those.
Yep, it's an important job, that's for sure, and somebody's got to do it, Daryl.
In addition to water issues, I also work with the nuclear waste, natural resources, planning, and building safety.
So you're one of those people that wears a whole lot of hats there in Nye County. So, okay, and I'd also like to introduce Levi Kreider. And Levi, go ahead, tell them what you do.
I work for Nye County. I'm with the Nuclear Waste Repository Project Office as the Geoscience Manager, and also with the Natural Resources Office as the Acting Natural Resources Manager.
Okay, and Levi's always there at our meetings and gives us helpful advice. And we wanted to talk a little bit tonight about the water program, that the test wells and all that kind of stuff that we're doing around here and how that's going to be expanded. So, Levi, would you like to do that?
Yeah, sure. Nye County currently has a program where we take water levels in about 60 wells in the Pahrump Valley, and those are primarily domestic wells, but we also have a new set of 5 wells that we drilled here in Pahrump that we monitor water levels in, and we've done some water chemistry in as well. That program is part of a larger program where we monitor water levels in about 120 wells in Pahrump, Amargosa, Stewart valleys, as well as up north of Amargosa up into Oasis Valley. We also do water chemistry in some of those wells, as well as pump testing, geophysics, and some other investigations.
And would you like to expound just a little bit when you say geochemistry? What kinds of things can you learn from the chemistry of the water?
Well, one thing we can learn is about the water, the quality of the water, and whether it's drinkable. We can also use various isotopes and other analyses to look at the origin of the groundwater to try to determine where it's from, which helps us define flow paths, groundwater flow paths in the area. And most of this work started as part of our Yucca Mountain related hydrologic science work, and it's since expanded in sort of a natural resources direction, and we're also trying to help support what the Water District is doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably don't realize how much investigation has been done because of the Yucca Mountain project. And now that Yucca Mountain is apparently, well, at least temporarily, not going to be coming online, we don't want to lose all that information and carry it forward so that we know what's going on with water levels and water flow paths and all that. Mm-hmm. So, okay, and we have a map there. Can you go to the map maybe and show them?
I don't think that we captured the map.
Oh, you didn't do that?
We have one level
okay.
visual, but yeah, I don't think we captured the map.
Oh. Well, that's okay.
Okay.
We're expanding into other parts of Nye County. So, like Beatty or Daryl, did you want to comment on that?
Well, you mentioned the Yucca Mountain relationship. As part of our involvement in the Yucca Mountain program and oversight of the science that was going on at Yucca Mountain, the Department of Energy has paid Nye County to do our own independent science work. And as part of that, we were doing a very significant amount of groundwater studies in southern Nye County. And as you mentioned also, Yucca Mountain at least is on a temporary suspension
Hiatus,
of
yeah.
activities. So the water district is taking over that work plus trying to expand it throughout the county. And since the nuclear waste office had the primary expertise within Knight County, those are the people that have come over, Levi and his staff, to start trying to expand that groundwater studies program
Okay.
with a little more emphasis on Pahrump and then in the rest of the county.
Yeah, I guess, and we have to have a little more emphasis on Pahrump because this is basically the population base, so we'll learn a lot more down here, I would imagine.
Well, water resource issues are very critical in Pahrump, and we can talk about some more of that later, but it's
Pretty
something
big
where,
issue
where
right
a lot,
now.
lot of our focus is right now.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we always have to talk about, well, at least when I'm on here, we always talk about conservation and what direction that should be headed right now. So that wouldn't be a bad topic either. But did you want to add anything to the investigation part of it, Levi? Or
Well, I think we'll get into it as we expand beyond Yucca Mountain and Pahrump up to the northern part of the county. The Water District is interested not just in water issues in Pahrump, but also in water issues in the rest of the county. And we've begun scoping out a larger scale science program to expand our monitoring efforts into the northern part of Nye County, which would be the Tonopah, Smoky Valley, and the other areas in the northeastern part of the county. And we don't have that off the ground yet, but we're actively working on it. We hope that we can learn a lot more about the water resources in the county, how much there is, and how things are changing over time, which I think would be very important as development occurs in the northern part of the county, or potential development could occur. It gives us a basis to evaluate potential impacts.
yeah, it's always good to have a baseline study done so that you know where you're at in any given space and time, so that you can tell when there are differences. An interesting thing that I found out that I did not know before I was on the water board is that we have geothermal potential in Nye County, which I thought all of that was up north around Reno, but I guess is it Railroad Valley that has the geothermal potential?
Yeah,
We have several areas of geothermal potential in Nye County. Railroad Valley, but also some around Gabbs, and of course, even like at Beatty, we have hot springs, or warm springs, which means there's some hot rock underground, but at least at the surface, that's not enough temperature to make geothermal economic today.
But it is in Railroad Valley and Gabbs.
Yes.
And what kind of temperatures are we talking about, hot enough?
well, it depends on how deep you go, and the deeper you go, the hotter the water, basically, until you get below the water. But we could be looking at a couple hundred degrees Celsius.
Wow, that's really hot. What would that be in Fahrenheit?
That'd be about 325.
If you look at the places in the state and in the world where geothermal energy production is going on, they, of course, pick the easiest stuff to get to first, the stuff that's hottest and shallowest. And there are a lot of places, like up in Reno, where there was actually steam coming
Right up
out
to
of
the surface.
To the surface.
Yeah.
So that was kind of why they concentrated there, because that hot water was shallow and cheap to get to. A lot of the places that they're currently exploring today, they have to drill holes several thousand feet into the ground, pump water down there to extract the heat. So it's more expensive, and it still makes economic sense to do so. And the state of Nevada has probably some of the best geothermal potential in the country. So
Yeah.
we're
well,
very, very lucky for that. And the NV Energy grid that is up north in Las Vegas, not here in Pahrump, is getting a large proportion of their renewable energy from geothermal.
Yeah. And speaking of renewable energy, we are also blessed with a whole lot of sunshine. So I guess Nevada's probably about the best place for solar, too.
Well, we have a lot of projects that have been looked at in the southern part of the county, up Tonopah South. The first one to start construction is a one called Solar Reserve's Crescent Dunes project just north of Tonopah. And you might think, well, the sun's better down in the Pahrump area than it is in Tonopah. However, there were a couple of advantages there. One, there was transmission available coming to. There was a transmission line coming to a big mine up there.
Yeah.
What used to be the what was the name of that mine? Levi Anaconda was what it was most recently, but it's Equatorial, I guess, is the historic name for it. And so there was a 230 kV power line that came to that area. And the sun is almost as good there as it is in the Pahrump area. So, plus that area had a little more water available than the stuff down south here.
Yeah.
The some of the things that are really limiting our ability to sell power in the Pahrump and Amargosa areas are the lack of transmission and the need to export that primarily to California if we want to sell it, because the ENV energy grid is
Right.
pretty much tapped out on what renewable energy they need for the state's renewable portfolio standard.
I see. So then therefore it'll be going to California where there's a huge need for
Yes,
it.
they still need it in California.
Yeah.
However, there are a lot of people trying to sell renewable energy to California. Even Canada and Wyoming and Montana are
Holy cow.
trying to sell wind power to California right now. So
Yeah.
we're competing with a lot of different folks for that.
But wind is, I've heard that it's not as good a resource basically as solar or the geothermal.
It kind of depends on how much you want to put into it. It's cheaper than solar. So a little bit of wind you can always put into your grid without much problem. If you start trying to get high quantities of wind into your grid, you have problems, because wind generation is when the wind blows, and no one knows when that's going to happen.
When that's going to be.
And
Dependent on
in general, it averages more at night than it does during the daytime, which our energy need is during the day.
It's
not
during
at
the
night.
day, yeah.
So it doesn't do us a whole lot of good to generate wind power at night.
Yeah. Well, unless it's filling in for the solar gaps because the sun doesn't shine at night. So,
But even then, it's not steady at night. It's just kind of, it comes and goes. And places that have started putting lots of wind into their grid back in the Midwest and in Texas are starting to see problems with grid stability, I guess is the best term, because the wind ramps up quickly and drops off quickly sometimes when a cold front blows through or a storm comes through. And so the need for backup power is very strong.
very high. Yeah. It's a lot more intermittent than the solar is.
And the solar, well, there's basically two types of solar. There's photovoltaics, which is the rooftop panels that people tend to see. And then the big projects that are currently looking in Nye County are solar thermal, where they're using the heat from the sun to generate very high temperatures so that they can generate steam. And once you generate steam, it's basically the same process to generate power as if you generated that steam from geothermal energy or coal or natural gas. It's still the, you know, once you generate steam, then you run it through a steam turbine to turn a generator. And the steam doesn't know where the heat came from.
It doesn't care.
It doesn't care. It's still the same process. And the advantage of that is it's not as intermittent. Where a photovoltaic panel on your roof, if a small cloud comes over, the power generation drops off.
Drops way down.
It's just a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
The power generation drops off. So the energy companies are very concerned about how are they going to bring large quantities of photovoltaic power into the grid as well, just like the wind issue.
Yeah. Well, then, besides photovoltaic, like the plant that's potentially going into the Amargosa area?
The one at Solar Millennium was the first one in Amargosa that we may have seen the public hearings around here. Nye County has a development agreement. That is a parabolic trough solar thermal. The one that's being built north of Tonopah is a power tower.
Oh, that's where they all concentrate on the...
They all concentrate on a
single
600-foot tall tower. And so there's like 1,700 acres of mirrors that focus on that top of that tower. The one that was planned for Amargosa that we're still hoping might get a power purchase agreement and a transmission resolution. It's called a parabolic trough. There's actually a smaller one of those operating south of Las Vegas. And the
one by Boulder City?
by Boulder City. It's the same technology. And these mirrors are about 25 feet tall and are done just basically in a big U shape so that the sun reflects off the mirror back onto a pipe and it runs down the middle of this
And it heats the
U-shaped
pipe
trough.
then, yeah.
And in this one, you're heating some sort of heat transfer fluid. In the case of one in Argos, it was a similar to diesel type material, which would then go into a heat exchanger and it would heat a salt solution for storage.
So is there an advantage over the tower or the parabolic,
Well, the tower gets hotter.
or PV for that matter?
Well, the power tower gets hotter, so its overall efficiency is higher.
Okay,
When you're talking about any kind of thermal electricity generation, the hotter temperatures are more efficient. So that gives you the potential for, like I said, higher efficiency and less water usage.
yeah.
So,
I noticed that there is a company in town that's selling, they're actually portable, they build them on a trailer, portable PV panels.
those are photovoltaic panels, yes.
And it seems to me, I don't know, it just makes a whole lot of sense to me to generate the power where you're going to use it right there at your house. I know it's expensive to get into, but in the long run, it just makes a whole lot more sense.
Well, if you've got a large lot, which lots of people in Pahrump have
Yeah.
large lots, so if you've got the room for it, then being able to pull one of those trailers up and park it where there's no obstruction to the
Right.
sun is a fairly easy and quick way to get your photovoltaic power. In the more densely constructed subdivisions, rooftop is probably
More practical.
your only option.
Yeah.
And then each system has to basically be engineered specifically for that rooftop
Yeah.
to fit the size and
And all of that.
everything. So it's a little more expensive per kilowatt. Where this trailer is, I think, a little cheaper because it's sort of kind of pre-engineered and
Right.
you just pull it up and
Plug it in.
plug it in.
Yeah, and a lot of people may not know, but if you generate more power than you use, the power company has to give you a rebate for that. And I know we got a little bit sidetracked here on solar, but I think it's important to note that solar does take water, so,
Well, the photovoltaics does not use water. However, the solar thermal projects, just like a natural gas-fired power plant or a coal-fired power plant, are fairly large water users. Now, the ones that are here in Nye County, they understand that water is a precious resource in the desert. And all of them have gone to something called dry cooling, which reduces their water usage by 80 or 90% over what's called wet cooling, which is, if you've seen many old industrial plants, you'll see the cooling towers, they call them, where they are evaporating water to generate the cooling that they need. In a dry cooling plant, they don't evaporate the water. They're using just like large car radiators, just several acres worth of these huge radiators that blow air across the radiator to
cool it
remove
down.
the heat.
yeah.
And so since you're not evaporating the water, your water usage is much lower.
That must be hard to do when it's 110 out, though.
Well, and that's why the companies are, well, it's a higher efficiency as well. And if they lose somewhere in the 3 to 10% efficiency at the hotter days. So when the plant needs the power the most, because demand in the desert is highest on hot days when all the air conditioners are running, is when their power generation is lowest.
Yeah.
So
So,
nothing is ever simple.
no, nothing is ever simple. That's for darn sure. Well, so what else do you think is important that we're working on from the Water District?
Well, the issues that we have to deal with, of course, water resources are something we talk about a lot. The balancing factor is that we have to work within state water laws as well.
Right.
And even though the amount of water that we have is limited to what we actually have falling in the county, we don't have, Las Vegas has the Colorado River to pull water from.
Right.
In Nye County, everything that we use is essentially groundwater, which originates by precipitation falling in primarily the mountain ranges around.
Right. And
towns.
primarily in Mount Charleston.
And here it's primarily coming from the Spring Mountains to the east of us. The water falls as precipitation in the mountains, as rain or snow. As it starts flowing down the mountain, a good chunk of it evaporates, but some of it does percolate into the ground. and then ends up flowing downstream. Water flows downhill. A few other things flow downhill too, but water flows downhill.
Mainly the water, yeah. It carries other things. Yeah.
And once it gets down to the basins, then we have what's called an aquifer, which is at some level, it's kind of like a bathtub. Big bathtub here in the valley. But it's much more complicated than that, and that's where Levi's and his group come in from the...
It's a lot more complicated than that.
Because in the Pahrump Valley, we have some areas where the water level's dropping and some areas where it's rising.
Yeah.
So it's not quite like, if it's a bathtub, it'd all be the same level. But
Right.
we're seeing a lot of those issues here. And as we put more stress on the aquifer from more construction of homes and more wells and those types of things, then we are seeing that we do have some real challenges to face us. And I think that's where the water district comes in,
Yeah.
is dealing with that. We also have the water quality issues, and we have some naturally occurring issues in the desert, as well as the challenges that come from having high population densities in certain areas. And we have a lot of septic systems here in the valley. And
Right. There was some concern, actually a lot of concern about this, I'm thinking it was about 6 or 7 years ago, and Southern Nye County Conservation District got a grant, and with Tom Bucco and some other people, we went out and measured 200 wells in the valley, and we were looking to see if there was any contamination from septic tanks, and we found none. There were 2 areas that had high nitrates. One was way out south where there was hardly anybody living, and the other one was by the dairy. So we figured, well, the one out south was probably naturally occurring nitrates. But it's interesting to note when you say that, the water levels are coming up some places and not in others, it's got a whole lot to do with what's underground and how fast the water can move, which is Levi's department. So you want to say anything?
Yeah, we generally see higher water levels in the recharge areas, which is where the water is coming down from the mountains and getting into the valley floor, the sediments in the valley floor, and recharging the aquifer there. And those areas are where the water levels typically come up first. So we see that on the south end of the valley, but some in the north end too. But we also see water level declines in other places out, particularly out in the valley, where no recharge is occurring and heavy pumping is occurring. As far as the nitrates go, I'm thinking of Tom Bucco's report. I think it's the same one you're talking about.
Probably is.
He found that the nitrates out on the south end of the valley were naturally occurring.
And then the others were near the dairy, so it might have had something to do with that, maybe.
Well, and we're continuing to do some studies on that. Levi, maybe you want to talk about something. We're just now kicking off with the USGS.
Yeah, we've just started working with the USGS to identify wells all around Pahrump Valley that are going to be sampled for nitrates. And the goal of the study is to sort of start characterizing the nitrates in the Pahrump Valley. We might be looking at arsenic as well. We're just currently evaluating where wells are in the valley and where we should sample to get a good distribution throughout the valley. And this work will all sort of feed back into what's already been done to try to understand the nitrates and how they're distributed in the valley a little bit better.
And you will be touching on arsenic as well.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about looking at arsenic, and we don't have a final plan yet, but as I said before, we're in the planning and development stages for this project.
Okay. Maria, it looks like we're almost out of time.
Yes, we're just about out of time. And I've just been sitting here kind of like a fly on the wall, just kind of listening to all of this, just trying to soak it in. And I'd like to invite you guys back to talk about, like you said, the conservation. Because
there's a lot more to talk about.
It sounds like there is lots of studies going on and lots of things that you are trying to solve as far as how this valley and how the citizens of this valley are going to maintain receiving water resources for the future. So if we can work some conservation into that, then we can get everyone hopefully involved.
Well, I really encourage people to come to the Nye County Water District Board meetings.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a lot of information as discussed in those. And the Nye County Water District is a fairly new entity that was set up by the state in 2007, I believe, is when it was officially created. Took us a little while to get the group up and operating, but it is working fairly well now, and our goal is to protect the water for the citizens of Nye County.
That's right, all of
And-
Nye County.
All of Nye County, and including the people in Pahrump. And Pahrump is a designated basin, meaning that with the higher population and the large number of domestic wells, it is one that has the perceived risk of, well, we know it's over allocated.
We know it's over allocated.
Now, whether it's over pumped or not today is a different story. That's
Yeah.
up for discussion.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to have some good data. If a lot of the water issues in this Pahrump as well as Nye County, those things end up in front of the state engineer at some point in the future. And we want to make sure that decisions are based on good science and not just on
Hearsay
or someone's,
Yeah.
emotional response to an issue. And like I say, our doors are always open as well. And if someone wants to
Yeah.
have a specific question, Levi and I are always available to answer questions. And then once again, we do encourage you to come to the Water District Board meetings if
Absolutely.
you're interested in this subject.
Yeah,
And the next board meeting will be August 22nd
22nd,
at the Commissioners' Chambers at the
Okay.
Calvada I.
open to the public.
Oh, yep.
Come on down,
Thank you so much for coming, and I feel like we could sit here and talk for another half an hour.
at least.
And we want to thank you for the good work that you're doing down there, and thank Nye County for employing these very, very smart gentlemen and Donna to do all these things for us. And we will have you back to talk about some other issues in the future. So don't forget to go to the Nye County Nye
Water
County
District.
Water District Board meetings. Next one is August 22nd. Thank you, and have a safe week. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.